In this video, we're going to look at a competitor to the body theory, the personality theory of personal identity. So the personality theory of personal identity says that basically same personality, same person, different personality, different person. But this is going to need some clarification, both what do we mean by personality and what's going to count as same personality and what's going to count as different personality. So, but why might we go for the personality theory in the first place? Well, the brain is where the personality is housed. So we think if you have the same brain, then you have the same personality. And if you have a different brain, then you have a different personality. And you might think, oh, well, that's it. This is why actually we care about brain identity difference. Not because brain identity and difference itself is what personal identity and difference consists in, but because brain personality, brain identity and difference implies something about personality, identity, and difference. And that's actually why we care about the brain, is because what it tells us about personality. And personality is really what's important for personal identity. We don't actually care so much about the brain, except insofar as it does this other stuff for us. And what actually matters for personal identity is personality. So what do we mean by personality when we talk about the personality theory? Well, the sort of colloquial sense of personality, and if you were to look in the dictionary, this is what you would see, is the combination of characteristics or qualities that form an individual's distinctive character. So it's what in your psychology distinguishes you from everybody else. What is distinctive about your psychology? And so it's what makes me in a qualitative sense, maybe, in the sort of what are my unique qualities. But it's not necessarily, but those can change pretty radically, right? And we can survive those radical changes. It's me who had this one personality before the change and another personality after. So I have persisted. I may have a very different personality than I did 20 years ago. So numerical identity survives change in personality, although qualitative identity doesn't, right? So this isn't the intended sense of personality, although it's because it's a very narrow sense. When we talk about personality here, what we really want to say is the entire psychology. So all of your beliefs and desires and goals and memories, ambitions and fears, even the ones that aren't unique to you. So you may believe, oh, it's, I can see the sun right now, or, oh, there's ground underneath me, or I have a body. And many or all human beings will share those beliefs with you, and similar things about desires and goals and so on. And yet we're going to count those as part of your personality in the sense in which we're using personality here. What we mean is your entire psychology. So whatever is psychologically distinctive about you, but also those psychological traits that you share with other humans, those traits that you share with other mammals, and those traits that you share with other animals more broadly, like lizards, right? There are parts of our minds that are very similar to, say, lizards, that, we can, for example, feel pleasure and pain, and we can hear and see things. There are lots of differences even at that level, but there are also some similarities. So your psychology, your personality is going to really be your entire psychology. Now, many of your psychological characteristics are stable, including the things that we think of as distinctive as having to do with personality in particular. So the most common, popular, widely accepted theory of personality that we find in psychology is called the Big Five theory, and it isolates 5 traits that seem like we can measure them in different ways, and those different measurements give us the same results, that these traits are fairly stable over time, and then they have some significance for how we function in the world. So the 5 traits, well, the acronym for the theory is OCEAN. So the first trait is openness, and this is how open you are to new experiences or not. Do you like new food and new music and new, new kinds of movies and new experiences generally? Or do you prefer the kinds of experiences that you're familiar with? Good or bad, who knows? The more you are open to, by openness, we mean openness to having new experiences. How sort of attractive, or at least not unattractive, are new experiences? Conscientiousness, you have a conscience that says, oh, I should be doing this and not be doing that. How likely are you to follow out what your conscience is suggesting you should do? Extroversion, sort of how outgoing are you? Do you get energized by interacting with other people, or do you find that rather interacting with other people is a drain on your energy? agreeableness. How important is it to you that everybody feel fairly happy with interactions? And neuroticism, how prone are you to feeling negative emotions and then feeling negative emotions in reaction to those negative emotions? And each of us have some, degree to which we have each of these qualities, and in general they don't change a whole lot over time. They certainly can, but they, without any action on your part or major life event, they're going to stay the same. There's lots of other psychology about stable psychological characteristics, but then we also go through a lot of psychological changes. So earlier, when I was in elementary school, I remembered having been in kindergarten, and at that time I liked the Lemonheads candy. Now, I don't like Lemonheads so much, and my memories of kindergarten are much vaguer. On the other hand, now I remember having gone through college, and now I like sushi. So my tastes have changed, my memories have changed. And yet so my earlier personality, it's different from my later personality, and yet it's my personality in both cases. It's me. I've survived. Now, sometimes we go through very big changes, and we might say, oh, he's not the same person. So if you have a very severe brain injury of the right kinds, you can change pretty radically in how you behave. But then, major life events can change pretty radically your psychology as well. But when we say he's not the same person in this sense, what we mean is this person has gone through a really big change, but we mean it's still him. It's there's a being there that was first one way psychologically and is now a different way psychologically. So he was one way, and now he, the same entity, is another. And that person, we may admire that person for having gone through the change, but the point is they persist. They're still around. And another way of seeing is that they still have their old obligations. So if you're married to someone, you have obligations to your spouse. If you go through a big psychological change, it may be appropriate that the relationship end. That can be very appropriate. But until it does, you still have those obligations that you took on when you married the person, meaning that it's you, the person who was married, and you're the same person, even though you've changed pretty dramatically. So we survive psychological changes, and we have a different personality over time. But the personality theory, as I said it before, seems like it would tell us we're a different person, right? Same personality, same person, different personality, different person. What's a different personality? So therefore you're in the relevant sense a new person? Well, in the way in which we are understanding same and different person, no, it's me that's changed. I have survived. I'm still around even though my personality has changed. And so we don't say different personality, different person. So we want to sort of think about, well, how much psychology does have to be the same for me to survive? So here an analogy might be useful to a rope. So when you make a rope, you take a bunch of little fibers and you wind them around each other, and you do this at different scales. So you wind a couple around each other, and that gives you a strand, and then you create another strand by winding the fibers around them, and then you create another strand by winding the fibers around each other, more fibers around each other, and then you wind all those strands together. So if you look at this picture, that's what you see. You see a bunch of strands wound together around each other, but those strands themselves are made up of fibers that have been wound around each other. Now the thing with the rope is that it's perfectly possible for you to have one very long rope and to have no fiber that runs all the way from one end of the rope to the other, so that you can have two different points on the rope where there's no fiber where the fibers that are over here and the fibers that are over here are completely different fibers. Why is it the same rope? Well, because at any given, whenever we look at adjacent parts of the rope, parts that are right next to each other, there's not necessarily entirely the same fibers, but it's almost all the same fibers. So we have almost all the same fibers from here to here, and then almost all the same fibers from B to C, and almost all the same fibers from here to here. But as we go along, we're getting changes in which fibers there are, so that once we go far enough, although any given two pieces have almost all the same fibers, in fact, at the beginning and at the end, there are no fibers in common. Okay, so we can imagine that maybe that's what's happens with personality as well. So you start off as an infant, you grow older and get into middle age, and finally you become elderly. And the personality that you have at these different points might be quite radically different. But at any given point in general, between any two given points that are very near to each other in your life, your personality is going to be quite similar. And so just like with the rope, on the other hand, though, as you get further apart, you can have pretty big differences. So we might then state the personality theory like this, the personality theory of personal identity. If X and Y either have exactly the same personality, or they have a very similar personality, or maybe their personalities are pretty different, but they're connected by a chain of very similar intermediaries, just like in a rope, then we would say that X and Y are the same person. And if none of those conditions are met, otherwise, then we are going to say that X and Y are different people. So that would be the revised personality theory of personal identity. And this theory is compatible with their being souls. All it says is that personal identity cannot be explained in terms of souls. It's also compatible with physicalism, with saying all there is physical, there are no souls. Either way, the personality theory would say, yeah, our personalities end up being a matter in the end of purely physical matter. Our brains are physical, our minds are physical. Or, no, maybe there are souls. The personality theory is neutral between these two approaches. The personality theory and the body theory are in competition. They are formulated differently, but they also disagree about specific cases. So suppose that we could upload your personality into a computer. Or suppose that you have a degenerative brain disease, but we're able to, as parts of your brain fail, we put in circuitry, like from a computer, that's going to do the same thing as the neurons that are currently in your brain do. So we would slowly replace parts of your brain with metal, but the metal that does the same thing as the neurons that are there right now. So in those cases, your old brain is gone, either because it's been discarded as after your brain was uploaded into the Matrix, the computer. I mean, not the Matrix, the movie, because in the movie, people's bodies are actually used to house their brains. But it's uploaded into the web or whatever, or your brain has been replaced with metal. So your old brain is gone, but your personality survives. So the two theories we've been looking at are going to disagree about these cases. The personality theory says, you survive, you're still around. Why? Because your personality is still around. It's housed in something new, not the old familiar brain, but your personality is still there. The body theory says, no, you cease to exist because what you are is your brain, and once your brain is gone, you don't exist anymore. And so these two theories disagree about these cases. And we're going to look in the rest of this unit at some other cases that these theories disagree about that will help us get more of a sense of what these theories say, and also help us to start to evaluate which of these theories and decide maybe which one we like more and which one we like less. So that's what we'll be doing in the rest of this unit.